All right, excuse the abnormal background, but I wanted to film a quick standalone review for Machine Hood today. This is a sci-fi book that I got an ARC from NetGalley and I got a physical ARC from my friend Cassidy. And so I was always planning on reading it, to help my ratio on NetGalley and because I had a copy around. And so I picked it up, but I had like no expectations. This was a book that my friend Kayla had already read and gave 3 stars, and I had a really great time. So let's talk about why I had a great time with it. So if you're new here, I sometimes just talk at the top of the video about my general experience, my state of mind when I read it, so you can kind of get where I was at when I picked it up, because I do think that matters. I think when you pick up a book affects your experience with the book, like where your mindset was. And I picked this up after a 2-star read. So I was annoyed. And I'd been having kind of an month where a lot of the books I expected to really like, I was liking, but not as much as I wanted. So here's a book I have no expectations for. I just had like a slumpy book that never was going to end. And I pick it up, and it was like a 4-star read, man. Like there were moments where it could have been a 4.5-star read if it had just done some of the execution things like a little tighter. But in terms of content and bingeability and like how invested I was really liking this story. So now I'm going to get into a brief synopsis, like what's on the back of the book or the first like part of the first chapter, and then get into some elements and what I think were done well and what I think could have been done better, just to see if this is a sci-fi book that's coming out this year that you might like. So let's get into it. The synopsis. Machine Hood takes place in like 2090-ish, so near-ish but far future. And this is a world where there's a lot of gig economy. So you don't really have a stable job anymore. You do gigs to get money. It was really weird reading about that, like as someone who just got monetized on YouTube. It was really weird. But so you have the gig economy. You also have this way, you have these ways, actually. I think they're called Ys, W-E-I, but I think pronounced Y, which are these artificial intelligence that are part of your life, but they don't have what is called sentient intelligence. And yeah, the global economy is a lot closer. You can travel really quickly around the globe. Like the world is really cool. What this author envisioned for 2090, I'm not against in some ways. Like in some ways the economy is really not ideal, but I wouldn't say my economy situation right now is ideal. So, pick and choose. But there's just this integration of technology and humans in life, and you get to follow 2 main characters, Welga and her sister-in-law. And they both are have different angles on this world. And Welga's about to retire. She's a bodyguard. And she does that for a living, but she's going to turn 35. And God forbid she work past that because she won't be as pretty anymore. Because this is kind of like fake bodyguarding. It's more for looks. It's so weird because of the nature of the economy. But I thought it was really cool. And right when she's about to retire, like a few things happen. One, her body's starting to have weird effects based off some meds she's using, or I don't know how to best describe them, but you'll find out when you read the book. And this really weird terrorist attack happens. That's the best way I can put it. And so the story is unfolding what is happening. And you mainly follow Welga and her sister-in-law. Her sister-in-law is kind of more of like a biogeneticist who has a family in India. And I loved the characters. I really loved the pacing of the story. Like I read this over the course of 4 days and I've always wanted to pick it up. I never wanted to put it down. It was always really readable. I was always really engaged. I had buy-in to the stakes and why Welga would be at the center of all of this, which her name is actually Olga, but that's her nickname because of childhood things, which I thought was a fun anecdotal thing. And it has really interesting questions and answers to AI questions and economy questions and labor questions. It has all of these things, and I don't think it necessarily does it in a super deep way, but I don't think it was superficial either. It was somewhere in that medium where it definitely added to the story and you wanted it to be there, but it wasn't essential. I don't know. It's like I said, it just wasn't the most nuanced conversation, but I also don't think, like I said, it was super shallow or superficial. I really enjoyed thematically the content that was there for an action-packed sci-fi story, which I have a lower threshold for what I would need thematically from an action-packed book in general. This is a pretty good action movie for sci-fi, but with better character work because it's a book, so you get a little bit more insight into characters and their motivations and everything like that. Some of the issues I had might be related to just the ARC, so keep in mind I've only read an ARC, I haven't read a finished proof. is that sometimes with the world building, even though I found the world building so cool, like I loved discovering this world and what she envisioned for the near future. I just thought it was so cool. And like, you could tell this person worked in biology because I'm like, I understand what you're like making up based on fact here, if that makes sense. Like, it's still fiction. Like, I get really annoyed when people go into science fiction or like, but that's not how the science would work. It's fiction. It's fiction. But I loved the grounding of the science fiction in biology, like as someone who's done biomedical work. It was really cool. But in the execution, there were straight up some passages that almost felt copy and pasted, if that makes sense. Like there was a scene that happened and she talked and thought about one thing, and then it basically almost felt exactly inserted at another point. And this happened a few times. There was some repetitiveness in the world building execution, and sometimes, like I said, in almost a verbatim way. Now, I could totally see that being fixed in editing, so that could just be me with the arc. But also, like, if you're someone who doesn't like info dump world building, you might not like this. Like, it's definitely a very, like, here's the world. Like, it's not, you get dumped in the middle of it and it's hard to figure out what's happening. No, you get to learn about it pretty easily, but, like, I needed that when I picked it up. Like, my brain was so tired and so bummed. It was just so nice to be like, oh, I just get to learn about this cool thing. And I didn't have to, like, work for it. And as I've said in other videos, I kind of like a good info dump. It has to be done well, which is why I'm pointing out the things that I didn't like about the world building execution. But, like, I don't mind info dumping. So that's part of the execution. But though, like I said, I just really liked the world. I really liked the characters. I think what is going to be controversial is how people feel about the ending. I think I've landed on I like it. It's interesting. I can't talk about it at all in a spoiler-free way. But the ending was really interesting to me. And I ended up liking where it went. I think I would have liked the execution to be handled with a bit more nuance, but I didn't mind it. I think it made sense with the character traits that we were given, with the state of the world we were given. And I generally liked it. For a standalone sci-fi action-packed book, it was the perfect level of like character depth and pacing for me, if that makes sense. And if you know me, I like to have a little bit of character depth. I like to have some quiet moments. So I say this is action-packed because for me, I could not put it down. And I do think it really does go from like action to action to action, but it does have some quiet moments, which I know aren't for everyone. Like, I think my friend Kayla read it and she gave it a 3 because she kind of thought it lost steam for her. So that could happen to you. For me, it never lost steam, but I was really invested in these characters and I didn't mind watching them think through something or have quiet moments with family. And it all really worked for me. Do I think I'll reread it one day? Probably not. I say that, but like The Light Brigade was a sci-fi that I felt very similarly when I got to the end of, which was like, this was a fun time. That was a great time. And I now perpetually always want to reread The Light Brigade. So for all I know, in a year or two, this could be like that. I just finished it a few days ago. I don't really know, but I had a great time. So like, I don't know. I'm very appreciative of this book because I was feeling slumpy. And it made me not slumpy anymore. It made me excited to read, and any book that makes me excited to read, I'm very appreciative of. But I recognize that, you know, all reading experience don't happen in a vacuum, right? You are affected by your circumstances. So maybe if you've been like on a reading high and you pick this up, you might have the opposite experience of me. And I hope that wouldn't happen, but I could see it. So that's all I really have on this one. I just wanted to talk about it. I think it's a really fun release this year. Like I said, I had a great time. I really liked the worlds. I think I've said that at least 10 times. And if you made it this far, put like an emoji that makes you think of computers or AI, and otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.